A very warm welcome on this program on Canal de English. The name of the program, as you all know, is The Forum. Our guest today in this very first edition for the week is Mr. Humphrey Bongang. He is a journalist by profession, but we are not just going to talk about the journalism profession. We are going to talk about the 33rd anniversary of Paul Biya's accession to power, and we are also going to talk about the telecommunications sector in this country and beyond. And to conclude, we are going to talk about peace. He has worked with some NGOs in this country on matters pertaining to contributing and stability or peace initiative within the littoral and southwest regions of this country. Please do not go away. Welcome back. My name is Elie Smith, host for this program for today, The Forum. And my guest this morning is Humphrey Bongang. Mr. Humphrey Bongang, it's a pleasure to have you here on stage.
Thank you very much, Smith, and I'm highly delighted to be your guest on for the first time on this very interesting program.
All right. It is a program that is every day on weekdays here on Canal de English, and we always receive guests from different walks of life. We understand you are a journalist, isn't it?
Yeah, that is my first profession, is journalism. Is what I went to school to study, what I loved as a young schoolboy from primary to secondary school. And it was just obvious that I would go on to become a journalist. Yeah, because if you would not mind, I would, from secondary school, I was already running journalism clubs, became president of one very most influential club in school, doing producing papers, write-ups, covering news and feeding students on a daily basis. So I think that's from that moment that that interest in the profession
developed in you.
Yes.
But now you said you had wanted to become a journalist. You are a journalist by profession.
Certainly.
But are you practicing your profession?
I can say, you know, once a journalist, you are always a journalist. You know, you might not be, say, full-time in a media house like Canal or some other, working on a daily basis, gathering news, doing programs and so on. But you do journalism in one way or another. Presently, I do a lot of freelance. I write as a columnist in a few papers, and then I am executive editor for another magazine called Niger in Diaspora, where we do mainly profiles, right? It's more an economic kind of paper highlighting the economic potentials of Nigerians living in Cameroon and Cameroonians living in Nigeria. So we try to bring this kind of information to be able to motivate others and you know.
Okay, that's very good. Well, Mr. Bongang, now we have heard what you are doing. You are still a journalist. You do practice or write as columnist in some papers, and you've given the names of those papers. But now I think it is still newsy because we are in Cameroon, and the government of this country, headed by Paul Biya, has celebrated its 33rd anniversary. Since it came to power in 1982. But the question I wish to ask you before going deeper into it is, how come that when Paul Biya came to power, it was a national issue, and now it has become partisan? Where did the break happen or took place?
Yeah, I think if you remember well, President Paul Biya came to power in 1982. He came to power when there was a one-party system. Everybody at that time belonged to the CNU. So the CNU was like part of government, part of the national institution. So much so that when he came, and at that time, it was the first change after a very long time. So everybody had to go along with it, But as time evolved, a few years down the line, multipartyism came. People started having different opinions, and so on and so forth. You cannot expect that the euphoria that greeted the coming of President Paul Biya in 1982 could be anything near it today. Yeah, it cannot be.
All right.
It cannot be.
So I think that's what, are you now saying that it is simply because the realities then are not the realities today?
The realities today are totally different from that. And I think too, there's been a lot of, let me say, dampened expectations. The expectations of the people have been so dashed to the extent that so many people don't even want to be part of the information, even just as basic as knowing what is happening.
Okay.
Because I think they expected so much and so little has been given.
You say people expected so much and
Yes.
so little has been given.
Yeah.
Are you in other way trying to say the same thing that the Messenger, Le Messager published today, claiming that 33 years has been 33 years of regression, that Cameroon has plummeted from where it used to be? Do you share the same idea?
Yeah, I think to some extent, yes, because if you look at the economic indicators in 1982, Cameroon was a vibrant country. Agricultural-wise, we were up financially. They had the country, if official figures are right, they had a large reserve. But today, the reserve was not only exhausted, the country was plunged into heavy debt and so on. People expected that after 33 years, let me just give an example, infrastructural-wise. If you look at all the major developments in terms of infrastructure, airports, roads, ministerial buildings, other government structures, housing, and so on, most of them were done before 1982. So now, you now ask yourself, 33 years after, what new has been done? The major roads linking the provincial headquarters, if we could only limit that to, they have remained the same. Even just expansion, no. You travel from Douala to Limbe, those were roads before 1982. You go to Bafoussam, to right up to Bamenda, go the other way to Yaoundé, it's the same. One would have expected that when you meet something, you improve on what you have on the ground,
Yeah.
So virtually very little, extremely very little has been done.
Very little. When you say very little, which means that somewhere something has been done.
Yeah, it cannot be to some.
What has been done, in your opinion? What can you? Because some people think that nothing at all has been done by this regime, but you say there is little that has been done. What?
Yeah, no, you cannot also say nothing absolutely has been done.
Okay.
Like I said before, I think they have not met the expectations of the people based on the resources that are in the disposal of the government.
Okay.
With these resources, it is expected that a lot more could have been done. I think that one of the areas where I see that the government really succeeded, or succeeded even is in quotes, because the education, let me say, especially the basic education, and even to some level secondary education, that go to virtually every village or every small subdivision in this country today, you will have at least a government primary school and a government secondary school. And
that are what you consider as successes.
Successes, you know, people don't, kids don't have to travel kilometers again to get to school. You know, at least in the various villages, you see that there is possibility for a child in every subdivision to go to a school.
Yeah. But so you think that if Bia's government or this government has succeeded, is only in the area of basic and secondary education.
Yeah.
How about university or tertiary education department? It is under this government, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, it's under this government that after a lot of pressure, that the lone university of Cameroon in Yaoundé was split to 6 other state universities. And I think along the line, another one, Bamenda, has been added, Marwa added, Konoma. I think education generally has been quite okay. If we want to go into the funding of the university and the infrastructure in place for these educational establishments, that would be another issue. But at least accessibility is there.
Accessibility is there. Now, I would like to ask you this question before we can round off and then go focus on another topic. Yeah. Now, there are some people who are of the opinion that, yes, as you said, the universities were open, but there are just politically motivated, oriented universities with no fundings, no infrastructure, which in other words mean it is null and void. Are you of that opinion?
To some extent, yeah, but I have an issue. I think the problem has been how to manage. Because if you go...
How to manage what?
To manage the resources.
Yes.
Because if you see the budgets of these state universities, how much is pumped into the university, for example, for construction of amphitheaters, for buying of equipment, you will see that the figures are enormous.
Which are you in any way trying to insinuate that the administrators of those universities are corrupt?
Well, I don't want to use the word, use that kind of word, but
or
if you have,
do they mismanage?
That is it, mismanage. I will say so, because if, for example, they are talking of a university that receives close to 3 billion francs CFA from
which university are you talking about?
No, I'm just giving an example. Yeah.
Now let me ask you another question, sir. I'm sorry to be cutting you off. We have a problem of time, but there is another thing. Yes, you say there is a sufficient appropriation or allocation of budgets to those national universities. That's what you are saying.
What I'm saying is the resources that are being allocated to the universities as of now, if they are well managed, the results we'll have there will be far more than what we have. Because when you get an amphitheater of 100 seats, 200 seats being constructed for 300 million francs, it is clearly mismanagement.
Is it not? Is that the rightful terminological description of the situation? Do you think that it is mismanagement or corruption?
I think they can be both of them.
They can be both of them. Now, let me say something. When we say the education has succeeded, how come that in the classification of African universities, you have only one Cameroonian university that features in the top 30, and that's the University Yaoundé University 1? Which in other way means that the plan, problem, the successes in terms of education is not really an education, because at the end of the day, you need to be among the top 10 or the top 20.
Yeah, I think when we say university within the 33 years of the New Deal government has succeeded, we are not putting it in comparison with other universities in other countries.
Yeah.
If we go now to do that, we can now say that, okay, not much has been done.
Not much has been done. Let me ask you another question. Now, another question being asked is the treatment of the Anglophones in this country. Do you share the opinion that Amadou Ahidjo, that Paul Biya is worse in the way he treats Anglophones than Ahidjo?
Well, I think by the time Ahidjo was in power, I was not old enough to have a clear assessment.
But,
Of
but you know the history of Napoleon. But were you born when Napoleon was there?
No, that is, I understand what you are saying.
Yes.
I'm coming to it. You know, I mean to have a personal assessment of what is going on. But the cry of Anglophone marginalization is what I started hearing as a little child. I'm still hearing of it today. It's quite a complex situation. There are certain times that you look at situations and you want to weep. But at times you also look at, say, okay, in every society where there is a minority, there are always those kind of problems. But what pains the most is if you have said, we are going to do everything in all fairness, let that fairness be seen. You cannot have a structure where you have unwritten rules, where you say an Anglophone can only be assistant. Yeah, how does it work? No matter how qualified he is, you go to some structures, you see people who are renowned, they have proven their worth elsewhere, out of the country, and when they come to Cameroon, they play secondary role.
Have you read the declaration of Chief Mokete in the Star newspaper today?
And unfortunately, I have seen the headline. I have not had time to read it.
He is complaining that the Cameroon Tribune, which is a national daily, is marginalizing the Anglophones.
That is
it true?
The issue of Cameroon Tribune is a sad situation, because you see there is unfortunately I would have brought that edition here, where it's in a whole daily, a so-called bilingual daily, you have one single article in English. The second was an advert
in English.
In English,
in
a whole daily, bilingual daily, with all the policy documents and so on from announcements from various ministries.
Which means that this regime has failed in terms of integration of the Anglophones, or in terms of considering them as part and parcel of this country.
Yeah, I think it's
true or false.
I think it's whether it is failure to integrate, but I think there is some. I find it difficult to explain whether it is cautiously done to say, okay, these people, they don't matter much, we should do it in this way, or is it just lack of.
But in that case, on the other hand, we have accused the Francophones a lot.
Yeah.
But are Anglophones themselves not also complacent in what is happening to them? They claim to be victims. For example, when you have the Prime Minister of this country who cannot speak English, and whereas he's an Anglophone. When you have the Minister of Culture, she's only good enough, she's no longer the Minister of the Culture, but she could not address a single word in English. Are you not, you Anglophones, or us Anglophones, the architects of our marginalization in this country?
Those Anglophones who happen to be around the power circles, I think the greatest problem to come from them. Like we were talking of Cameroon Tribune. You have Anglophones working in Cameroon Tribune. Do they actually write the stories, and they are rejected? They say, no, this story cannot go into our paper. You have a senior, one of the most senior journalists of Anglophone expression today, who is deputy director of Sopeka, Mr. Sheikh Peter Mabu. If somebody like that is in a structure and all that kind of mess is going on, I don't understand.
You don't understand. Okay.
Yes.
Now we are going to change the topic and focus on something else. We know already that in Cameroon and in the Cameroon National Army, the official language there is not English, it is French. The police is French. So to be fair, Anglophones have no place in each country, though it is. But now let me ask you another question. You have, beside working as a journalist, you are a journalist by profession. You are now in the telecommunications sector. What do you do precisely?
I am a country manager for a service provider, telecoms service provider. The company is called Safari Telecoms. What we do basically is providing technical services to the technical partners of telecom operators. Yeah. So.
And has it been easy?
Well, so far it is early to make a clear assessment because we are at the initial, it's a startup. So along the line, we will see how it goes. Yeah.
Now tell us a little bit, because you have also been working in the peace building sector.
Yeah.
When you talk about peace building or peace maintenance, what
Conflict.
are you talking about precisely?
Yeah, peace building, like I said, journalism is my first profession. I also have a second profession, I call it. It's conflict management and peace building, because my graduate studies were in peace building. Peace building is a very wide term. Conflict management thing. So what we are talking of basically is being able to create an environment where people of different views, people from various backgrounds, can be able to live together harmoniously. It can be at various levels, even from the level of the family to the level of the village, the tribe, right up to the nation. So conflict is something that is everywhere. It is it is with us, in between individuals and so on. So we must be able to balance up all these differences for that we live a harmonious life.
And where
conflict, or let me say, to be able to live a violent-free life.
A violent-free life. Yeah. And where were you operating, and what was the organization with whom or with which you were working for?
Yeah, I was working for an organization called the Ecumenical Service for Peace Building. It was an organization created by Christian churches in Cameroon. It was jointly owned by the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon, the Église Évangélique, and to some extent the Catholic Relief Services. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And where were you operating? Were you operating all around the country, or you had some specific regions where you were working?
No, it was a national organization. It had offices. It had an office in Garwa that coordinated activities all in the far north. That's Adamawa North and Extreme North.
Yeah.
You had another office in Yaoundé that coordinated activities for the center, the south, and the east. Then we had office in Douala here that coordinated activities for littoral and southwest, and another one in Bamenda that coordinated activities for northwest and west province. So it had a national coverage.
It had a national coverage.
Right.
But the question that everybody would want to ask is that we are a country supposedly to be at peace with each other.
Yeah.
A stable country, I don't know, miniature Africa, whatever you call it, island of peace, as the government likes to pride itself of being. But the question is, why a conflict management institute in such a peaceful country?
No, when you say Cameroon is a peaceful country, it is... we are not, yeah, it's true, until recently with the Boko Haram issue, we have not had the kind of civil disturbances that we've had in other countries. But if you remember before the early 90s and right up to the year 2000 and beyond, the level of violence, tribal conflicts and so on that were generated more from the political changes that were taking place after 1990 were so enormous. There were conflicts in the southwest, in Cuba, people were being killed, houses burned because of different political opinions. So those are it is within those 90s that many of the conflict management institutions or non-governmental institutions had a lot of work.
All right.
Yes, that is when we actually came in and started mainly with education. Our activities were mainly education, training, mobilizing community leaders, religious leaders, and so on, and giving them basic notions on conflict management. For example, what we activities like myself personally, when I was working in the field, was bringing together chiefs, quarter heads, and so on, and giving them all these notions and making them able to handle those issues at their various communities.
At their various communities.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Humphrey Bongang, it was a great pleasure having you today, and we hope to have you here more often when need be. And it was we want to thank those who have been watching us from far and wide, from here in Douala, in Bamenda, and Victoria, and all over the world. That was Forum for today. We hope to see you again tomorrow for more programs or another interview in this program. Please do not go away. Stay tuned to programs broadcast on Canal de English. Until then, have a nice day.